Good morning. No, yeah. It was the catamaran that ran across the US. Where codex zeros. And then it makes a calling, according to Harrisburg, and it gets to up to Akron to New York, so it shuttles from New York. The road trip. That's what I'm there for.
Okay, Chevra, we have a shorter session today because it's Rosh Chodesh, so we're going to stop at 6:25. Okay, so let's take a look. Last week we were looking at the halacha that if the shtar gets destroyed, then the witnesses can't independently just draw up a new contract and sign it. If it's a promissory note, because that could potentially, first of all, they have to get the consent of the lova, of the debtor before they do it. And they also, if they don't get permission from the lova, then what recourse does the creditor have if the promissory note is destroyed? He can bring the witnesses with him to Beis Din, and the Beis Din can write up the new contract based on the witness's testimony, even without the debtor being present. And there, the Beis Din can write the original date of the loan because they're basically just reconstructing the original contract. But let's say the witnesses are able to get the consent of the debtor to rewrite the promissory note. Then they cannot write the original date because they have to worry about collusion between the creditor and the debtor. Maybe this whole thing is a trick, right? So that's what we learned last time, okay? Now we're up to Sif Mem. Aval, shtar matana or shtar mechira below achrayas. But that's only when we're dealing with a promissory note, where there could be potentially encumbered property that could be affected if we rewrite the shtar and put the original date on it, right? Without and we put the original date on it. If the witnesses do that, they could potentially be encumbering or latching onto property that was already encumbered. Aval shtar matana or shtar mechira. But if you're dealing with a bill of gift or a bill of sale, as long as it's without achrayas. Now, what does without achrayas mean? Beferish, explicitly. So the Imrei Yaakov says, Perish shehisna kein laheja. He says there was a stipulation in the contract that the sale is as is, no warranty. You ever go to a used car lot? It says as is, no warranty, right? So let's say there's a used car salesman and he's selling a car as is, without any warranty. That's called below achrayas, without any surety or without any guarantee. So, and that's written in the contract explicitly, because if it's not written in the contract, like the Imrei Yaakov says, because we paskin that if you draw up a contract, the bill of sale, and there's no stipulation whatsoever whether it's as is or whether it's guaranteed, the assumption is that there is a warranty. Okay, the assumption is that if there's no mention at all, that the warranty is implicit. Okay, but here it said that the sale is as is without a warranty. So then that bill of sale gets destroyed. A week later, the buyer comes to pick up his car, and he can't find the bill of sale, but he had witnesses that saw that it was done, and so he is ready to pick up the car, and he's ready to pay the balance on the down payment. So yichtavu bo zman harishon. the witnesses can, in that circumstance, write the original date of the sale. Va'afilu shelo midas hanosein v'hamocher klal. And that's true that they can rewrite the document without the knowledge of either party, technically. Va'afilu lo ra'u shenevad mimenu shtar harishon. And that's true even if they never even saw the original bill of sale get destroyed. And the reason is, Kilo Shaykh Lachush Shemayilo Beis Shtaros Sheyigba Beis Palmim. So we don't have to worry that the buyer will have two copies and collect two times, Kevin Shehi Karka Miyuchedes, because the item that is itemized in the contract is specified what it is, whether it's real estate or whether it's an automobile, a used auto. He specified. You're purchasing, a 1975 Volvo, and I wonder if you can find a 1975. All right, let's say, it's a 2005 Volvo, a red with license plate such and such, right? And that's the deal, right? That's the deal. It's right. So therefore, there's no harm in writing a second bill of sale, even if there's just a rumor that the first bill of sale was destroyed, because what's the harm? No one's going to be able to collect a second time. Or if it's a piece of property, you always have to write the borders and the location of the property in the shtar. So therefore, there's no concern that there's going to be a second collection. Begam lo shayach ba'kvar asu shlichusam ki achshav enam osam lo shum chova. And you don't have to worry that maybe the buyer already collected the property, or and they're writing him a new one. He says, and actually, you don't have to. Really, the argument is, how can these witnesses be authorized to write a new bill of sale if they've already fulfilled their proxyship? Don't they have to be reappointed? He says, no, because now they're not generating any new debt or any obligation. He says, because the first shtar already created the transaction. And this second bill of sale or bill of gift is only there as evidence that there was a transfer of property previously made. So he says that's the difference between a bill of sale and a promissory note. And he says, Masha'en kain bishtar chob, when it comes to promissory notes, afshu gam kain l'raya, even though it's true that a promissory note is there as evidence of a previously made loan, he says the problem is, if you write a new promissory note, even if you leave out any kind of lien on the person's property, let's say the promissory note says explicitly there are no liens on the debtor's property. So maybe you could argue, well, in that case, I don't have to worry about unfairly taking encumbered property from a person who already purchased, right? But there's a secondary issue. And the secondary issue is that how do you know that the creditor wants, that the debtor wants there to be a promissory note? If, let's say, you're not sure whether the note was destroyed or not. He says you were witnesses to the witnesses were witness to a loan. They witnessed the loan, and initially there was some kind of instruction for them to write up a promissory note. Then the creditor comes back and says, the promissory note was destroyed. Can you guys write up another one? They didn't write the original, but they witnessed it. Will you guys sign a second promissory note? So they can say to him, well, wait a minute, we're not yet ready to do that. We don't necessarily have authorization from the debtor to do that. He says, because when there's a debt that doesn't have paper attached to it, it has a different status than a debt that has paper attached to it. He says there are many, many differences in halacha as far as an oral debt versus a written debt. Ve'ein chavin la'adam shelo midaito shum choiva. And therefore, we can't write another promissory note unless we get the authorization of the debtor. Even if we know that there previously was a promissory note, but it was destroyed, we still have to get express permission from the debtor to write up a new promissory note. V'chein mi shepara mixas chovo, u'mivakesh mimenu hamalva lahachlif lo hashtar yashan b'chadash. Now, let's say, here's a very practical illustration. A guy borrows $10,000, and then the debtor comes up and he says, I can pay you back a partial payment of $3,000. So I still owe you $7,000. So he says to the creditor, so let's write up a new promissory note. You'll tear up the old one, and we'll write a new one that says that I owe you $7,000. Okay? And the Malva says, okay, lo yichtavu bo ha'edim mizman harishon. So in that situation, the witnesses are not permitted to write the original date of the loan. Ella zman sha'omdim bo ata. They can only write in the present date. That the property only becomes liened to the loan from the present, even though the original loan of 10,000 was made much earlier. Ki shibat harishon nifka ata v'hachzarasa osa lelova. He says, because as soon as I, the creditor, give back the promissory note to the lova, and he tears it up, that destroys the original lien. And I can't now go ahead and create a new lien retroactively. I can only create a new lien from the present. So that could potentially create liability for the creditor. Obviously, what would be a solution to this problem? If the creditor wants to maintain his old lien, and the debtor wants to make a partial payment,
give him a receipt for the 3,000.
That's right. So the Lovek could just say, give me a receipt for the 3,000, and then the Malva can hold on to the original paper for 10,000. Why would the Lova have an aversion to doing that? I lose paper very easily. You give me a receipt for 3,000, I'm worried that I'll lose it, and then you'll come after me for the full amount. So the Malva can say, hey, buddy, grow up, right? That's what it means to be a grown-up. If you borrowed money, then you have to be prepared to hold on to a receipt if you make partial payment, and if, and that's really what that would be the creditor. We would advise someone, if someone were to ask us what would be the most advisable thing to do, is don't write up a new promissory note for 7,000, but hold on to the original note for 10,000 and give the fellow a receipt that you already received 3,000 from the debt of 10,000. Yeah, you would have to bring witnesses. If you don't bring witnesses, you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? Why would you pay back a loan that was done with witnesses without witnesses? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then each time, though, the creditor should issue a receipt, right? Okay. Unless maybe it's stipulated in the contract, unless otherwise noted, it will be assumed that you've paid back. Yeah. Okay. Elazman sha'omdu bo'ata ki shibat arishon nifka'ata b'achzaraso salolove ve'enu yachol ata l'shabei nechasel mechadash v'shalom midas halove lo yichtavu klal. But if it's without the consent of the love, right, when there's a debt and the promissory note has been destroyed, you should never rewrite a new note. Afilu mizman she'omdim bo ata holu kvar asur shlichusam. Like we said before, you can't write up a new note even if you date it from today, because they are proxies of the debtor and of the creditor. They can't write up a new note without getting the express permission from the debtor. Okay, we'll hold it here for today. Let me wish you a guten chodesh, and we'll take a look at the Imrei Yaakov on this tomorrow. And it should be a beautiful month of Shabbat.